say, now the time has come for the lion to tell his own story. Yeah, the one them called Celestial represent for the mighty lion voice. And this a shook up your planet tectonic. As me sip up my roots and tectonic. And you can't make me jump nor get panic. Have the engine a run like mechanic. Room.
The time has come for the lioness to tell her own story.
Yo, this is Pagabens and time have come for the lion to tell them own story. This is the Lion's Voice. Stay tuned.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari, live it. Hey, the lion's voice, Rastafari.
Greetings, this is Warrior King, and the time has come for the lions and the lioness to tell their own story. This is the lion's voice. Give thanks and praise for the wonderful blessing that's been poured on me. Give thanks and praise. Jah use it as an instrument to set the people free. Jah give her the powers to chant. Jah give her the powers to chant. Rastafari, the lion's voice.
Amina, the time has come for the lioness to tell our own story. No surrender, no retreat, we are Jaja soldier. Rougher than the streets, tougher than a boulder. Bigging up Lion's voice. Now put it, I Jalifa said that.
This is Sangy Davis. It's time for the lion to Ika. For unity is strength. Let us come together, my brethren and sisters, and forward to the motherland. Enough love. This is the lion's voice. Jah Rastafari.
I'm Nana Farika. The time has come for the lioness to tell her story from her viewpoint and tell the world who Queen Omega is. This is the lion's voice.
Yeah, David Dread of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to the lion voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Oh, yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.
This is culture sound, a Rastaman sound, positive sound.
Culture sound system with DJ Culture Fire TG.
And now you're in tune to the culture sound, Rasta sound.
Culture sound, I'm gonna say DJ Culture Fire TG.
I and I help coming from the true living eyes, Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie the First, who created Zion and earth. He shall not suffer and I foot to be moved. I hold, he that keepeth Ethiopia shall neither slumber nor sleep. Well, youths in the streets right now, riots in your town now, Babylon them burning down. One bad police right now, riots in your town now, Babylon them burning down. No justice, no peace right now, riots in your town now, Babylon them burning down. The fire now cease right now, riots in your town now, Babylon them burning down. The youths them rise against brutality, man a kill another man for your salary. Then train them at the shooting gallery, black and loot, you might lose all your family. Them defend white supremacy, so them see the African as them enemy.
Yeah, I'm gonna say culture sound
like this for centuries, them sick mentally. That's why we have the out in the streets right now. Riots in your town now, Babylon them burning down. One bad police right now.
The year is 1892, and the land of Ethiopia has been experiencing 4 years of terrible famine and drought. They call it the Kikuken, or the evil days. At least 1/3 of the human population and 90% of the cattle have died. The hyenas have feasted on so many carcasses that they have become overweight and barely able to move. just when the people could take no more of the evil days. A woman named Wasiro Yeshimabe is giving birth in a place called Erjersa Gora. This is her 9th attempt to bring forth new life. Her previous 8 attempts only resulted in death. Will this child live? Thankfully, a healthy baby boy is born. His first cries are drowned by thunder and lightning flashes across the night sky. The heavens open up and torrential rain starts to fall. Ethiopia's drought is over, and the baby boy is given the name Tafari, meaning one to be feared or respected. Tafari's father, Ras Makonnen, is a very important man in 1892 Ethiopia. Although he is overjoyed at the birth of his newborn son, he cannot spend much time with him. Ras Makonnen is the governor of Harar and must get back to the famous walled city to deal with its affairs. Furthermore, he is the foreign minister of Ethiopia, and having traveled to different places in Europe, he is very aware of the material and military advances they have made and the looming threats they pose to his country. Ras Makonnen knows that the majority of Ethiopians have no idea what is coming, and that he has to work that much harder to secure the realm. Tafari would grow up to become the legendary emperor, Haile Selassie I. To understand his journey, we must first understand the Ethiopia that he was inheriting, and what it was like when he was born in 1892. Get your copy of Kwesi Bansu's book, Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia, Volume 1, The Rise of the Priestly Warrior Kings, and increase your knowledge about the history, politics, and culture of Ethiopia in 1892, and how it connects to the rest of African and world history at the time. Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia, Volume 1 is available for purchase at www.bookmanexpress.pub. Please visit for more information.
Greetings in that divine name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I. Glory and honor in the name of His chosen Queen, Empress Waziri Menen. My name is Kwesi Bansu, aka the Chasmach Kwesi, aka Ras Kwesi, aka the Reading Ras, aka the Pan-African Happy Man. I'm a creative industry attorney, I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an actionist, and right now I am the host of Lion Talk Live. Welcome to Lion Talk Live, and welcome to the Lion's Voice Network, where the lions are telling our own story. If this is your first time watching, I want to give a warm welcome from my heart. We have just crossed 26,000 subscribers. Give thanks, over 1,000 subscribers in the last 7 days. We're keeping the pace, and it's because the word is spreading. The Lion Pride is doing the work, spreading the news that Rastafari independent non-aligned media has arrived. You know, the time has come. I really give thanks for the love, the comments, the emails, you know, the outreach. It's overwhelming. You know, I knew I had the vision, I knew it would work, but you know, it's always a joy to see the vision manifest and to be a part of history when you can feel actively be aware that history is being made, and the people are responding. Again, let me just say, give thanks to the Global Lion Pride. And if this is your first time, you should know that if you subscribe, you're part of the Lion Pride. All right. Tonight, we have a guest, a very special guest, foreign minister. So, you know, tonight is an international show. We welcome the Ethiopian World Federation foreign minister here, Ras Lazarus. Two of my very good brethren and sisters recommended, said, Ras, you have to talk to the brethren, and I mean, so highly recommended, um, powerful works that are happening. We're going to get some updates on what the EWF is doing. Global movements are happening. But this is in the context of the larger uprising of the Pan-African world. We know chaos. I mean, in America, Europe, you know, the governments, it's everyday headlines. We have to stay focused. You know what I mean? I, part of the Pan-African world, I that have been chanting this chant for decades. You know what I mean? We were speaking of these times to come. So the conscious community can't fold up right now or cool up right now. We have to come together. We got to stand. We got to have a clear direction. So part of the Lion Voice Network, we're bringing the voices, Pan-African voices. If you haven't seen our episode with Dr. Julius Garvey, first clip has dropped. I told the item that this is not just Rastafari on the platform. We're doing Pan-African content. Check it out. The full interview is available for the Lion Pride on Patreon. And the Lion Pride, let me talk about the Lion Pride on Patreon. If you want to become part of the economic engine, because everything has to have economics involved with it to be sustainable. This is not one of those fantasy channels where, you know, we just humble and we're doing it for the love. No, that don't work. You know what I mean? We are building institutions. We want to be able to employ our people, you know, have staff, you know what I mean, correspondence, serious business, you know what I mean? So we are dependent to be independent by the principle of collective security. That means that the audience have to be the main funder for this model to work. For I to be truly independent, it has to be crowd-funded, because once you start getting into sponsorship, those big sponsor checks start having weight. You know what I mean? When they tell you to jump, you have to say how high are your operation pop down. If you're funded by the people, then you're accountable to the people. You know what I mean? So I really give thanks for the Lion Pride on Patreon. We're now 29 strong. We're going for 100 strong by April 1st. We have our 100 Lion Pride Strong campaign going on right now. I'm offering consultations, creative industry consultations. I'm seating up with everyone who comes in $10 mark and up. I'm basically just showing you what I've been doing, how you can do it for yourself. You know what I mean? We want 100 strong. I don't want to be the platform up there by myself. That don't make no sense, because then something happened and I pop down. I have no one to reason with and to, you know, have that assistance. The concept for Rastafari independent non-aligned media is that we have our own Rastafari ecosystem. If we have a newsworthy topic, we're supposed to be able to send someone on a press run just to Rastafari media and reach millions of people. You know what I mean? So we got to build out that infrastructure. No one's coming to save us. You might not like you know, you might say the Chasmach talk too much. I take that, you know what I mean? But somebody got to do the work, and His Majesty rise high to do the work. And I'm passionate about it. And, you know, I'm asking the 100 core supporters of this platform, because I know, because there's no video on this platform that don't get at least 100 views. So I know the core is there. We're asking the item, just step up into the Lion Pride. Let's get to know each other. Let's build, you know what I mean? 100 Lion Pride strong. That is what we're dealing with. The goal is 1,000 by the end of this year. You know, we're building a machine, global powerhouse, we're worthy. We'd like to see Rastafari media sit down with Ibrahim Traore and have an exclusive interview. And I mean, when we talk about Pan African, we're not thinking a small way. You know what I mean? Asking them how they feel about His Imperial Majesty, keeping His Majesty in the true conversation as Africa rises. That's our work as Rastafari Independent Non-Aligned Media, and we're doing it, family. We're making it happen in real time, and it's because of the Lion Pride on Patreon, 29 strong. Let's see if we can bust 30 tonight. You can join, $10 and up. Schedule your consultation, 14 consultation, half-hour consultation. Big up Akashic Records. We had a nice reason in the Brethren implemented some of the things. This channel is growing like fire, you know what I mean? And we were able to reason. We are going to be looking at the rest of his ecosystem. So I love it because it allows I to get deeper with the ones who are supporting I and really build that collective security, you know what I mean? So when his platform, outperforms mine, that's not a threat, because now I can go interview on his platform and always have a space of relevance and vice versa. So this is a ecosystem. That's why we use the word ecosystem, you know what I mean? The brethren here, we were speaking offline and he was telling me about the EWF ecosystem, media ecosystem. This is how we have to be thinking right now. How do we aggregate the audience? How do we are able to reach direct to our consumer, people who are looking for our products and services? Economic development, family. Again, no one's coming to save us. We're watching, federal aid in America be cut. You know what I mean? That means all of the little grants and thing where people were depending on federally, all of that is coming to an end. You know what I mean? That era. So it's really I and I. No one is coming to save us. And I big up Dr. Claude Anderson, Powernomics. You have to build the economic base. Before you even deal with the politics and all of that, the economic base is crucial. So we're doing it. Rastafari Independent Non-Aligned Media. You can become part of the Ubuntu Lion Pride. Any contribution, $70 and over. You can Cash App, Zelle. You become part of the Ubuntu. Get on the Serengeti. Right now, it's all brethren who have stepped up on the Ubuntu squad, and give thanks for those brethren. If you don't have $1 to spend, you can become part of the Action Lion Pride. That just means like, comment, and share. You don't have to do any spending. You know what I mean? We find a place for everyone, and we give thanks because the channel is monetized. So the channel also generates revenue by people, watching the content. You can go forward and watch the catalog. That also helps the channel. And we're building a repository. We have elders, we have youths, all people who have distinguished themselves. So I encourage the item, go forward and watch some of the older episodes, the interviews. Like I said, we have Dr. Julius Garvey is the latest, but we have some major interviews we're getting ready to drop in this month of February. We're focusing on Reggae Month, Black History Month. We're going to be intersplicing those two themes. So tonight we're doing the Black History, Black Future. You know what I mean? But we're going to have people talking about marketing, reggae, the state of Rastafari reggae. We're going to be talking about them things this month. So stay tuned. This is the Lion Voice Network. It's going to be a mighty uprising. We're already trying to line up our special guest for the 30,000 subscriber episode. We're racing. It's coming so fast. You know what I mean? As I said, I just give thanks for the item. Because not I'm just the vehicle His Majesty is using to get the work done in this hour. So, again, join and let us do the work. Talking is not done because we have a guest. But before we bring forward the guest, Ramia King Design, free book. This is my brethren Ras Lidge. So when you see me sipping my water, I'm supporting a Rastafari business. we talk the talk, we have to walk the walk. Economic ecosystem, we say. Big up yourself, Ras Lidge. Big up CMAS Life, Ras Woolley, graphics and design. Our two longest running sponsors. Big up behind them. Strength and support. You know what I mean? And if you want to advertise your event, you have something, you know, reach out. We can work out reasonable pricing for your business or event. We're open, you know what I mean? So, again, Rastafari, independent, non aligned media, we are here. All right, so the guest tonight is a special guest, a guest who is no stranger to this Pan African world. He is serving, you know, institution that is special to all of I and I as Rastafari. We had our elder Ras Cook on the show to give us some history of the Ethiopian World Federation. The president is going to also add to that. Again, when we say non-aligned, we are dealing with all of the mansions and houses of Rastafari, but also the organization and institution that are ancillary. So EWF is not just a Rastafari organization for the black people of the world. So we're going to give you that history, and we are now going to go into the Brethren story, because the Brethren also have a story, went through a period of incarceration, dealing with the green herbs, and different things happen. So we're going to learn about the Brethren. So Lion Pride globally, make sure you check in, let us know where you're watching from in the comment section, and help us to welcome our guests tonight, Ras Lazarus. Welcome, my brother.
Yes, I welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Give
Minister
thanks.
Ras Lazarus Nazir. Let me put some respect on the eye name, you know what I mean? Bless up, bless up. How is everything with the eye?
Nagu salam. Everything is blessed, King. Give thanks. Give thanks. And I like to say it is an honor and a respect to you for your works, for collectively engineering and bringing together the minds and allowing that voice to be heard. So that is very important in these times. So I give thanks to you.
One of the things I realized doing this work is that we have all of these silos of works happening, but there's that connection. So there's this narrative that Rastafari people not doing nothing, and I'm saying, but this don't reflect the reality that I live. You know what I mean? I'm surrounded by bare works happening, so I don't, you know. So I wanted to create a platform that challenged that narrative and that expose the people to the type of conversation, high level Rastafari reasoning. You know, we look online, we see the 19 keys, we see the this, the that. We used to that. You know, that's our day to day. That we, you know, when you come up in this liberty, you used to the high level reasoning, but online we don't see them reasonings. You know what I mean? So I wanted to make sure that I step into the space and provide that for the family, particularly for the young people. But we have a tradition here on the Lion Voice Network with all of our guests. We're asking the eye to step into our iritical time machine and take us to the moment of the eye birth and paint the picture of the eye origin story. You know, take us from the eye birth to your journey to Rastafari.
Yes, I. Yes, I. Well, in the simplest, means a Gullah Geechee baby. Yes, I. It means a Geechee baby. Yes, I. So my family come from the islands on the coast of America. They are what you would call the Maroons of the Americas in those aspects. From St. Catherine's Island to Skidaway Island to Defusky Island, our family lineages are up and down the islands. One of the things that is not known by most people is all of these islands are mound, temple, spiral, pyramidical lands. The Gullah Geechee We are the separated ones. We are the ones that did not run straight up into the cities and take on the cultural identification. We stayed on the outskirts so that we could hold our culture in many of our ways. So in that aspect, I was born Rastafari, because Rastafari is that Nazarene, the separated ones. So it's that separation that starts that awakening. And from that point in our community, we had elders who, I'm talking about way back, who had locks, stayed up in the bush and things. Then we had our other elders coming up to our time period, and when I'm still about a teenager, but we have our other elders, Ras Hanif, with Savannah State Radio, played reggae for years. So in the Gullah Geechee community, it was rootical. It was rootical from the mamas to the babies, and a lot of people don't know that. In the instance of our family, I've watched people do a dialogue of separation of Caribbean and American. So if go right there, boy. I mean, I say I want to know. Them people don't know what we be talking about sometimes too. So in Gullah Geechee, we got our own patois. So patois wasn't no problem for the Geechee because we spoke patois the whole time. But in my family lineage, my grandfather, Isaac Anderson, my grandmother, Adele Anderson, is a book out called Drums and Shadow. And it's about the Gullah Geechee families. And if you go through the pictures in there, that's my family. That's literally like, that's my family. And it goes back to my grandmother, Ma Eva Bowen, is called the Indian. Here, they called her Indian. But in our family, we know it's because she's West Indies, meaning she came from the islands and was brought here. So in those traditions of knowing that, there was already that connection, So then when you grow up and there's nothing on TV, there's some Captain Kangaroo. I'm in my 50s, so I got a little age, So you got Captain Kangaroo, you got the Mr. Rogers and all of them. So we didn't stay in the house watch no TV. We went and sat out by the fire with my grandfather and with the old men. And when them old men would boil crab or cook fish, they bring their moonshine out, but they would tell the stories, and the oral traditions would be handed down.
Okay.
Yes, So at that stage, I thought I was doing something when I went to grow my locks. And one night I was sitting out by the fire by one of our older cousins named Gussie. Gussie said, boy, I know you is. Boy, I know you is. Boy, you know you is. Boy, I know you is, boy. And I thinking first I was like, yeah, you know who I is. Then he said, no, boy, I know who you is. And we had a discussion. See, it been in their heart for years. So when you stand up and put the locks on and you put that power on, the older men used to be like, yeah, boy, you free. Boy, you free. Boy, you free. You not scared. See, because they remember white people would get them for these identifications. Like we got elders in our community. Mama Phoebe, when I was young in the 80s, Mama Phoebe died. She was a slave. She came out of slavery, got to see Star Wars and Star Trek and see television. You understand? So
people don't realize how recent slavery was. We think it's some ancient institution, but we're one or two people removed a lot of times from slavery. And let's let the people know, what part of the United States are you talking about when you talk about Gullah Geechee predominantly?
Savannah. We're talking about Savannah, Georgia, going down from Savannah, Georgia to Jacksonville, Florida, going up into South Carolina, into Chalktown, what we call Charleston. All of those areas we have a tradition of family members that are boat builders. So in our area, people didn't drive the highway. Old men got in the boat and they sailed up and down the coast. So if the old man sailed down this way, and let's say he produced some family down here, but he was from this island here. So now you got family down here. So now everybody be traveling, and some of the family down here then ride up to another island up here, and they some produce some kids up here. So you got family over here too. So at certain times of the year when we was young, all of the Gullah Geechee communities used to meet the Fernandina Beach in Jackson, in Florida. And it just stopped, So yes, that's how the culture came to me. And it came through those traditional emplacements,
And the Gullah Geechee were known for their rice production in particular. Is that correct?
Yes. But what we're known is, you've heard the story of Tunis Campbell?
No. Enlighten us, please.
All right. Tunis Campbell was made a state representative for the Freedmen's Bureau. But Tunis Campbell led a mission in the South with who we would call the Freedmen's. And the Freedmen's had developed their own militia, their own Supreme Court, their own Congress. They had developed their own government. So in our area, there were 5 militias in these areas, but our people developed their own government. In fact, most of the neighborhoods or the communities, they call them neighborhoods now, but they were developing freedmen communities. Okay. So they were called freedmen societies. So most of them were incorporated under the status as societies because they were formulating their own government. And those things, after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and so forth, they quickly attacked and kind of eradicated that. Our community was also one of maybe many, but not too many are known, of Black communities that were subject to the boarding school ordeal. So on Skidaway Island, where my grandmother and them are from, Savannah, Georgia, Skidaway Island, there was boarding schools. So if you know how the boarding school traditions were to subject and redirect those minds and eradicate our cultural connections and so forth. So then that is also an aspect that many times is not heard in the Black community, that we were subject to boarding schools.
No, I'm not familiar about that tradition. So give thanks for that enlightenment. Oftentimes we think that Black people were just passive to slavery, and we're not thinking about all the resistance and the measures that were taken to try to get that resistance out of us. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It wasn't just in a vacuum. So as a young man, when were your first recollection of Rastafari for yourself? When did you start to gravitate? Yes, you have this Gullah Geechee culture, but when did the Rastafari aspect start to come in?
Well, Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, as for most of us, played a major role. Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Burning Spear, really pushed that directive. And to the point that I always remember being young, and my mother, like if you get in the car with your parents or something and you want to put the music on, a lot of times they ain't gonna let you control the music because you ride with them. But my mom didn't do nothing when I put Bob Marley on. And one summer she bought me the poster, and I think that was it. Just clicked. It just was like, okay. And she would ask questions about it. And so my grandfather was also one of those types that would ask you a lot of questions and make you, want to hear what your thoughts are. And because of that, it intrigued the next stage for me. So in my liberty of being in contact with Bobo Fire, uh, 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 Bingy Mother, Mother Bubbles, and so forth. It took me to where it was no returning. This was the answer. And going through the Gullah Geechee families, we were church born, so we knew the Bible. We were made to read the Bible. But what most don't know in our aspects is, George Lally, who took the Ethiopian revivalists to Jamaica, comes through Savannah.
Okay.
They tell the story that George Lally, the church that he was part of in Savannah, is the oldest black church, but actually in the committee there's older churches. So a lot of times, there was a strong movement already in the bush. We have what you would call pin societies.
Yes.
Still had our secret societies.
Okay.
Traditions coming from Africa and so forth was still there. And so Ethiopia, or saying Ethiopia, was already in that Black Power movement in the Gullah Geechee areas. So George Lally came through, and then he goes on to Jamaica, and
give us a history of George Lally, because even myself not fully familiar with the history. So give us a history, please.
Well, George Lily, I may be saying it different than most. Some Lily, who was also a patron, was supposed to have been in slavery in Virginia, worked his way down, working with the British, came down into the areas where they were able to purchase passage from America, because the British and the American thing was going on. They would be able to purchase passage from America to Jamaica, but he did not have the funds, so he had to work, put himself back into a pauper slavery in a sense, or working ordeal.
Indentured servitude.
Down through Savannah. But he was a Baptist preacher, a revivalist, and he pushed the Ethiopian anthem, which is that Ethiopian revivalist spirit that took over in Jamaica, which raised Marcus Garvey, brought up most of what we call the Nyabingu, even the chanting and the so forth. So that revivalist spirit that went into Jamaica actually was something that was already down here in the bush. So when you hear them talk about the Gullah Geechee, the stompers, and the singing, so we already, that's why I said, if you read the book Drums and Shadows, you will see we were building drums, we had drums. That's how we communicated from island to island with the drums. So there's a cultural history here that, and a lot of it has died. A lot of the elders who did these things, they're gone.
Wow.
And the youth won't know that. They won't know none of this no more.
And that's why the media is so crucial, because we have to observe this, and can't take for granted that it will be preserved, and the youths them are online, so we have to be online as well with it. I'm hearing an echo. Do you have anything else open over there?
Let me see.
Yeah, if your phone or anything else is open. But yes, family, we are here with Ras Lazarus and Coma, listening in. Big up yourself. Kiss Creations, peace and blessings. Yes, the echo's gone now. Peace and blessings. Mama, I fear beautiful, beautiful. Bless up. Mama, I fear resend the link to make an attribution. Don't say a word. I will send it. Give thanks for the strength. Ras Pam J every day. Lion Pride on Patreon checking in. Go to Pam J every day on YouTube and subscribe to the Brethren platform. The Brethren have a story coming out of Liberia, survive war. The Brethren is dealing with bodybuilding, health, being a stay-at-home dad. You know what I mean? Brethren's content, we're working together to really boost up the content. So make sure after this you go to Palm J every day and subscribe to the Brethren platform. Big ups to all Rastafari, the Chazmach, Kwasi, Nyabingi family. Importantly, EWF, Local 49, Mahel, Sefari. Yes, Mama, if I hear the I working, there's my big stuff, you know? So give thanks to see the support and the love. So, so what was the first? Okay, so Bob Marley was there, but when did you now start to check the emperor and start to wrestle with the divinity of Haile Selassie? When is that? How old are you? What year? What's happening in your life?
I have to be about, I got to be about 13, maybe 12.
Okay, young.
Yeah.
13. What year is that? What year? Late 80s?
Yes, about mid 80s, about 84.
Okay.
80, about 84, maybe 83, something like that. Yeah.
So this is early in the hip hop evolution. Did hip hop reach down south that time? Was it popular or it was still R&B?
Yes, it was popular. Hip hop had faded in its aspects. But then again, you couldn't buy. It wasn't on the shelves. It might have come on a few channels, but then again, for us, there was we could get the little sounds of reggae and certain things, right? But I ended up getting the autobiography of His Imperial Majesty.
Okay.
And then I was already a keen child in mythology. I started off my early childhood. It was I'm like at 8 years old drawing and trying to measure out why the mythological characters have planet names, and it made me as a child go to. I thought because these is planet. They're dealing with planet, and so that made me want to keep reading and stuff. So it took me to another level. So then with my mother, my grandmother in the biblical and the Bible traditions, and I'll say, and when we say our cultural traditions and the Gullah Geechee traditions, when we were young, they had traditions where they would take the people down to the river. Everyone would put all white on, go down to the river. They do the baptism in the river. The children were made to wear all white for 7 days, stand by a certain tree. They would watch the children for a certain amount of days till one of them showed that they have vision. So then they would say that this is a child who has vision. And then they would, they had these traditions, but a lot of them, not a lot of them, they're gone. The elders that would do it have transcended on. And then a lot of them became taboo. As you get more, people want to be less like they're bush orientated and more like an uppity class church. And, when those things go, it fades away. So at that stage, I would say those are the things that made it studying the Bible, studying the contrast of His Majesty's life, put it on point because, you listen to your grandmama and you saying, well, I'm listening and I done found what you told me to find. And so I don't know about y'all, but I don't know why y'all can't see it, but, and then that's, you at. But in the Gullah sense, we had Black Jesus on our wall at my grandmother.
Okay.
There you go. All
right. Serious. All right. So what is your first impression of the EWF, or when do you first learn about the EWF?
Well, I didn't really know about the EWF until Mama Bubbles um, had was asking me. She was actually asking me about it, you know, to see what I had read and if I had studied, and I didn't know about it. So we went to talking and building on it. Um, I was then more intrigued by it, but it didn't benefit me at that time because I still didn't have a clear conclusion of it. You know, it was more of as a roster just to say, well, I embrace, I know this, you know, it wasn't, I hadn't really caught the fullness of it. And that's where, you know, early I said, you know, was nothing on TV but the Captain Kangaroo and all of those things. So, and I big up for what you're doing now because most people don't know the importance of it. Is because in my era, you know, my grandfather and them, they used to build boats and they used to cook seafood and cook crab. They had the economy. They had a whole system, right? But when we were young, we're looking at TV. We're looking at all of this, the like hip hop coming out. Everybody going to the skating ring. You know, you trying to get the with the fat shoestrings for your tennis shoes, so you could, you know, look fresh and all of that. So here come your granddaddy telling you, "Come on here, come on, help me build this boat and cook these crab." You know, if you cook crab, you know, once that scent get on you. You can't go nowhere that day. You can't go out. You can't go out to no. You can't go to no skating rink because everybody be like, "Ooh, you smell like crab." So we used to run from the word. We ran from the tradition because we thought the world had the answer. There wasn't nothing on TV or nothing or nobody there to tell us where the answer was at. So we got consumed in running to the world when there was wisdom and knowledge right before us. There was tradition and culture that fought through time. But running to the world, like as most youth, I ended up going to prison.
Yes. Take us through your journey through hell.
Right.
Return.
So then the reality of Rastafari and the system and what it meant started becoming a reality. You say you don't know your foe, you don't really until you start fighting your foe. Sometimes you could be in the comforts of the world and you'll get caught in the illusions and trying to live through those illusions. And so until you really there got to fight the foe, and then you see that it's oppression, then you see the inequality. Then you start to understand that somebody has a control over your lives, and anytime they want to squeeze it, they'll think they can squeeze it. And are these righteous people? Is this a righteous system? Where does this system ordain itself to have this power? So once you got into that battle, it was another thing. So in my tribe through the belly of the beast, as entering into the system, I was real strict on the item.
Okay.
And when I got into the system, Rastafari had no respect. The Jews had kosher. The Muslims had halal. Even Christians could even get a special diet. But the Rasta, they didn't get no special diet. They told them they didn't need no special book. Or if you got the Bible, you got enough. If you go through the child land, you could eat boiled egg or a slice of cheese. That's a meat substitute. So now you're realizing that the system does not honor or respect. And now you're starting to realize we've been focused on some things, and now fighting that fight taught. So prison became a university for me.
Yes.
It became everyday law library, learning the aspects, peeling back the cores of their system. I've got more years in law than most lawyers. But I
What
didn't.
prison were you domiciled at? Where were you held?
I went through Estelle, Atlanta, Jessup, We even went through diesel treatment. They shipped us up to Oklahoma, ride you around, put you in a little van, ride you around for a while, ride you down to Jasper, Florida's, and all kind of other spots. Put the black box on you, so every time you move, the box get tighter and tighter, and they just ride you around. So everywhere you go at, if your mail come, by the time the mail get there, you leave again. So I went through diesel treatment as well through the process, but Jessup, Estelle, Atlanta, and stay in the southern Georgia's area. Yes.
What were you doing at these prisons? Were you doing labor, or you were just being housed?
No, me and my co-defendants, we had a traditional statement. We said we not here to build the prison. So a lot of people went into Unicor and went into the factories and worked. So at first I wouldn't do nothing as well in prison as well. We had already, all us had vowed, if you brought me in here, you're gonna make me do over a decade in prison. I ain't here to build your prison. That's not gonna be it. But in the end, I went into a facilities because it was an older black brother, and he was an architect, and he was drawing buildings and stuff for a lot of the brothers who might have was about to go home, want to design barbershops and stuff like that. He would draw them for them. And so he pulled me up. He said, bro, I'm going to hand you this hustle. You come in here, you could get the facilities job, and you can do the CAD, and you can do the architect. And, you get some side jobs, some brothers that ask you to design some stuff for them, and you make you some side money. He said, but then you got access to learning these skills and using the CAD things in the computer and so forth. So, when he presented it like that, me and him had already talked that I went to DeVry in Atlanta. So I had electronic engineering skills. So it was certain aspects, when you go to architect, it's pretty much a lot of the same aspects there. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten up on this and go through this.
Okay. Nice.
So that was like the one job. And then after that, I worked the law library.
Okay.
I did law library and I did GED. I taught brothers the GED. So yeah, those was my jobs through the process.
Give thanks. And just share with the Lion Pride, why were you locked up in prison? What was the charge?
Drug conspiracy. Like all of the other youths, we had a rampant, everyone was fighting in the poverty, trying to survive. But we was in the era, it didn't matter. They were coming through communities, scooping up whole communities under the conspiracy law. That drug conspiracy law era, they wiped out the black communities.
Wow.
In our community alone, they took 26 men and one sister, fathers, nephews, sons, and so that was the era. But that was in that sense, they had made us commit to the belief of a poverty stricken. They had us committed to the belief that no one gave us no help. There was no support. We were stuck under this situation. And only through studying the law and then looking back at the EWF, after going through those transitions of learning certain things, fighting a lot of cases. I sent a lot of people home. Tallahassee, Florida, they done sent people to threaten to tell me not to help people to do the law work. So, but then coming out, and I was going through legal works and legal battles still, helping people and stuff. But one of the things was we came out under working with Ross Marvin, the UNIA, And in that commitment under the UNIA, the UNIA is a powerful organization. Marcus Garvey brought us a master plan. But in the trot of studying it in law, I had been litigating back and forth, and a judge just decided, like sometimes, judges will have a footnote or something. And really it was like out of respect, the judge was really like, you argue good, because you have my prosecutor kind of like in a bind. But the only reason you're not able to move with this is because under the UNIA does not have treaty executing power. It doesn't have that self-executing treaty power.
Okay.
And because the UNIA has never entered into a treaty with another entity in those aspects. So even though Marcus Garvey did implement a government in that aspect, in the standings of a state of international law, the UNIA didn't have that. And so I, at that point, was realizing in the comparison that there was only one entity that we as Black peoples of the world had that had self-executing treaty power and that had that position in law that the judge had described was the Ethiopian World Federation. And so that's where it brought me back to the EWF in the full workings. And then I started realizing, wow, 20 years ago, the answer came to you. 20 years ago, the vehicle of liberation came. But you were still searching like most based on the TVs in the streets, searching for maybe the money would be able to do. But there was a vehicle of liberation to do that freeing that we all be trying to do in certain other aspects. But here was the vehicle, the Ethiopian World Federation. And so it was a journey to get back to that stage.
That's fascinating. I've never heard it explained in that way with the self-executing treaty power. Go deeper into the rationale behind that and what would be the treaty.
Okay. Well, and going deeper in that, as most brethren, in 1999 to 2000, most of the brethren, you hear everyone talking about UCC and sovereign filings and all of that. So in 90s, I was going through the sovereign filing process. 2000s, all of that. Registered the more, did all of the intricate things. In the end, I was realizing that UCC is banking laws. Really the laws that show a country, a government, how to operate with commercial paper, right? And how to use assets and monetize and so forth. That's really what the UCC is. But the basis of it is commerce, right? So what happens is we fall into this commerce jurisdiction and everyone starts saying, well, you got to do this because this is a commerce jurisdiction. You got to do this. But in the end, you can do all of the status corrections and filings, and then still the system pierces that veil. So then you got where next after that brother said, no, well, you got to set up a trust. See, so they trying to find a veil. So brother, you just using corporate talk to try to create a corporate veil. But you're teaching people that this is sovereignty. But most people don't understand that we're all sovereign under the law. And people are confusing sovereignty and diplomatic immunity.
Yes.
It's a totally different thing. A Chinese sovereign or nationalist can come here to America, but if he's DUI and he's driving and he hits somebody, they're going to lock him up. And he can say he's a nationalist, then they can call this consulate and they can deal with the treaty aspects and so forth, but they're going to lock him up. So a lot of brothers believe that if they say something, this and that, ain't nobody supposed to touch them, they ain't supposed to do nothing, da da da. I'm operating in commerce. Well, it's a double-edged sword, right? And it didn't come. It took years of going through this, because I watched where the Moorish tradition was one thing, and then the redemption manual from the Montana freedmen's and all of them put that information out. And then everybody went to UCC, status correction, nationality. And so you watched it change. So I've been there in the years watching it go from one stage to another stage. I've been here long enough to see that. And so I know in the system, when the redemption manual came out, that then the Moors adopted a lot of the UCC filings. It wasn't there before, right? So studying all of that, learning all of that, it came down to one thing. It went all the way back to one thing. The papal bull doctrine, the papal bull doctrine, the doctrine of discovery, was issued by the Pope. And in the issuing of the Pope claimed under the primacy of Peter that he was the highest throne of God on earth.
Yes.
And that he had this great authority that he could place a lien on all of the land and all of the people. And so this claim of authority by the Pope is that lien. And that Pope then takes that lien, which today we learn, we call it holder in due course. So the Pope claimed to be holder in due course. And if you're saying you're holder in due course, you have to prove your authority. So the Pope's authority was based on saying a claim under the Bible that he was the primacy of Peter. Now, recently I've been trying to educate a lot of brothers and sisters that you'd have to say, well, where did the Pope just pop up and all of a sudden he just got this? If we was the kings and queens and we was the rulers and all of this other stuff, how did the Pope just pop up and have the authority and issue armies and start to colonize and enslave us? How did we get to that? How did he all of a sudden just pop up and he could issue this and this decree, and then all of a sudden the people who built all of the civilizations, the indigenous peoples of the world, we in trauma and terror, and we don't have no power to counter it? Because it wasn't just that simple. What we miss, and this is how Ethiopia is so important, because they dared the history on us. It's called a Basilius. It's the Basilius title. The Basilius title is the title of King of Kings. Is that head monarchy or the imperial title. Now, most of us never really know that word. But if you study the biblical constructs from Herod in the Bible with the Jesus story, Herod claimed to be the Basilius, but he was taking over the area of Judea. And in that process, he was killing groups of people called Hasmoneans. The people he knocked off, called the Hasmoneans, we know them as Maccabees.
Okay.
Right? But the Hasmoneans, he married the princess of the Hasmoneans so that he could claim throne right as the Basilius. Now, when he knocks the Hasmoneans off, then you look at the history of the Hasmoneans, you say, well, the Hasmoneans had the title of Basilius. We really don't know that history completely there. Well, not to get too far off, right? In that history, there's been a fight for titleage and bloodline was based on called customary law, hereditary law.
Yes.
All right. Throughout the history, from the time of King Tut all the way up to our days, we made some errors. We initiated mercenary armies, meaning that after the King Tut area, Horemheb pulled a lot of mercenary armies. When King Tut died, Horemheb did not want to follow the hereditary customary. He wanted authority. So they were trying to break the birthright customary authority. This same process happened again under the Mamelukes. The Mamelukes in Egypt and the
Yeah,
Liberian
you're talking
area.
about the fall of Kemet and the
Right.
transition into
Right.
European dominant, Arab dominant society.
Right. And then that became Ottoman, and it period over into the Ottoman Empire, and then those Mamelukes took over, and a lot of them bore those Arabic so-called names in the areas of history. And so in that aspect, the 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 global aspect in that area were wanting to rid the hereditary claims. If you look into the titleage of Basilius, you'll see that they tell you there were the only two more birthrights that had the right to that title, and that was in Persia and that was in Axum. Okay. Now, when we study the Kushite blood lineage, we learn that Kushites were everywhere, but the other name for Kushites is Ethiopians.
Yes.
Clyde Winters has a book, has his study R1M173, the Kushite spread of the haplogroup. And it shows also in that aspect, not just in those areas, but all the way to China, even to the Americas. So in that aspect, Persia was called Ethiopia. So now you can start understanding that Ethiopia was the holder of that titleage. There were people trying to remove that claim for a long time, not just in our time, but for a long time. In that claimage, King Azana receives a notification, which some people say he was taught Christianity, but Judaism was already in Ethiopia.
Yes.
Okay. So he's not taught Christianity. Christianity was a titleage of an authority. The empire became a titleage of an authority. He was given the knowledge that he was the next Basilius, the king of kings. So he erects an obsolete with the titleage King of Kings, the Basilius on it.
Yes.
Okay. So then that declares him the empire. Well, that goes to a certain claimage of blood lineages and so forth. Well, coming down through those times under the Basilius, they had things like archons and so forth, or the council of elders and superiors and so forth. So this turns out to become our bishops and the others. So in the process of those who wanting to end the hereditary customary claim, they were removing the customary claim out of the world. So I don't want to go too deep on that, but
no. And for those who are following, we're talking about where the authority of all of these laws are coming from. We're gonna get forward to the EWF, why it's important.
Okay. Yes.
So we're just going in, we're doing a roundabout deep history dive. Start talking about the papal bull. Now we're talking about Ethiopia, and why Ethiopia claim is so important in terms of establishing law and justice in the earth. So continue.
Okay. All right. So in that Basilius claim, and when we get to King Azana, it starts even before that under Melchizedek. And what most of us miss is Melchizedek is the lineage. All right. I know a lot of us, and this going to be, and this is not the EWF opinion. I'm going to say that. This is my study. But I'm going to line it up, because I don't want a lot of people to say this is what the EWF. This is not the EWF opinion. Melchizedek under the Dejan Shua. Most of us, as we do research, you'll see that in ancient tablets they stipulatively say Melchizedek is Shem. Melchizedek is Shem. In a comparison of Melchizedek and Shem, What happens is most of us in our visualization of the Bible of Shem is, they did an interview with His Majesty, and a reporter was trying to ask His Majesty does he consider himself like Negro or black, and does he associate? And His Majesty said that he was Shem. And a lot of people took that statement, and in their psychology, their colonized mind, because we're trying to break the colonized mind, in their psychology, His Majesty's statement meant that he was in denial that he was black and that he didn't want to be black, until you go read the Jewish Talmud. You go read the Jewish Talmud in section 1, verse 8, it tells you that Shem is black. So the Jews know what their book says, Shem is black. But when other people hear it, because we're Western indoctrinated, when His Majesty said it, people here took it as, he's not black. He didn't want to be black. And he was stating he is Shem. Now, what makes that on that level that goes to the EWF is that under the tutelage of the Basilius, that they were trying to destroy the customary lineage. When they pushed this issue, by the time we get to the Pope, they had already pretty much cut all of the customary aspects off with, per se, and I'm just saying, the Jesus story. In the Ethiopian tradition, and that's why the Tawido Church becomes so important even in this aspect. The Ethiopian Tawido Church is one of the only entities that teach you in the nativity story that the three wise men are called the family of Balaam. The family of Balaam. And in most aspects, most people would say, well, what does that mean? That ain't nothing important. But in the Ethiopian Dejan Shua, the Ethiopian scrolls, the Dejan Shua, it teaches you that Balaam is a grandson of Melchizedek. But Balaam is the individual who the Christian world understands as who gave the prophecy of a coming of a star. Well, the Council of Nice took the terminology, the coming of a star, and they turned it to the coming of Jesus. So originally the story was the coming of a star. So it was a star prophecy, so we hail His Majesty as a star king under the star prophecy. Now, Balaam being a son of a descendant of Melchizedek in the Ethiopian tradition, now the Magi's who are following star knowledge are supposedly the ones who come in town when Herod has killed all of the Hasmoneans, and then he hears that the Magi's, who Balthazar, Melachar, Caspar. Balthazar is the Ethiopian, Melachar is Persia, which is Ethiopian. Caspar goes to the Indus Kush, which is another Ethiopian. These are three Ethiopian kings. Well, in the Dejan Shua, it breaks down that Melchizedek, from out of Melchizedek comes 12 kingdoms. So these kingdoms would not all be on top of each other. They would be spread out and abroad. So now we're talking about the Ethiopian Kushite Empire. But now
the Hindu Kush, when we talk about these kingdoms that you find covered in jungles in India, the Kushite empires.
Yes, sir. And so now the Indus Kush, or the Kushite Empire, becomes in a parallel association with Melchizedek. In that parallel association, if you go through biblical study, Melchizedek lives in the land of Canaan. Canaan is a Kushite, Jebusite land.
Yes,
the people of Canaan are Hamites. So before there is an Abraham, there is Melchizedek and the Canaanite people living side by side and together. No one asks where those people went at. If Melchizedek is a king, he's king over these people. Well, who is his people? So that means they're the Canaanite people. When we get into the deep study, that means these are African people, Cushite, Jebusite, Cushite people.
Canaan and Cush are brothers.
Yes.
According
Yes.
to the lineage.
Yes. And so when we go to the next component of logistically studying it, there is no language called Hebrew. There is no language called Arabic. Why? Because it's Proto-Canaanite language. That Proto-Canaanite language then becomes in Patois, Arabic, Patois, Hebrew, but it is a Canaanite language. So it became dialectly spoken in different language in different areas.
This is also known as the Afro-Asiatic language groups.
Yes.
You know, these are all African languages.
Yes.
There's a linguist, Joseph Greenberg, who did extensive research on this language group because there was an argument that Hebrew, Arabic, all of these were Indo-European in their root. And this brethren showed that these are all very closely related to the Bantu languages. You know what I mean? All of these is just the term Asiatic just connotes that it goes outside, extends beyond the African continent.
Yes.
So when you talk about Sumer, you know, which is not Afro-Asiatic, but they're related, ancient Sumer.
Yes.
You know, the black-headed people.
Black-headed ones.
Yes, the black-headed ones who gave us the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yes.
So when people are talking about Anunnaki, they're talking about a Kushite mythological concept, you know.
Yes.
These are all Kushite, you know. So when we talk about angelic beings, extraterrestrial beings, these were all ancient Kushite concepts we see replicated in the Book of Enoch, the Book of Life, you know, the significance of Mount Hermon, which was Syria. These are all black people lands, you know what I mean? And that's one of the things I try to get my Pan-African brethren to see, because they were corrupted and, you know, over time they were conquered and, you know, there was, you know, the complexion changed. But the deeper you go into history and prehistory, you know what I mean? The Natufians, you have, I mean, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. You know, when you start getting back into the Asian, they just found a structure in, I think it was either Zambia or Namibia, that was 500,000 years old. You know what I mean? Two pieces of wood intricately connected. So this thing goes Asian, you know what I mean, in terms of the black story.
Yes.
And what you're saying is that in all of this, and this is my central argument to all my Pan-African family, that Ethiopia is that missing link. You know what I mean? Because it's a lived tradition, unconquered tradition, because all of the other branches were conquered, you know? Regardless of what you want to say about how great Kemet is, Kemet fell. You know what I mean? And Kemet would tell you that their roots were in
Ethiopia. Yes.
So when we look at everything, we put everything on the table. Ethiopia stands alone in terms of those holy mountains, the source of the Nile River. You know what I mean? To this day, that spiritual reservoir, unconquerable spirit. So to me, without Ethiopia, the Bible falls apart. You know, the covenant to David falls apart. Everything, you know, it becomes all fairy tale. So Ethiopia to I is that one piece, that chess piece we talk about.
Yes, it is.
You know, is that piece that just makes everything
that
play.
Cornerstone.
Yeah, that cornerstone that allows you to cut through the geopolitics and to talk about where does the true authority, because I have this as an attorney. I get calls from people all the time talking about this sovereign talk. You know, I'm not as eloquent as the I, but I tell people about de jure and de facto sovereignty. You know what I mean? And I tell people, you're worried about the wrong things, because at the end of the day, if you cannot defend your sovereignty, you know what I mean, a man is going to do to you what he feel like doing to you at the end of the day, because sovereignty is defended by armies and battlefield and diplomacy and different things. So what we need to do is to focus on coming together and putting together a system so that de facto, you know what I mean, we are self-sufficient, the Kwanzaa principles, whatever you want to call them.
In that aspect, you know, that's why we go through that terminology of history.
Yes.
So that we could take people's minds to getting away from being divided by the constructs of religion.
Yes.
And then we get people to not seeing His Majesty as a threat of their religion.
Yes.
Because that's the thing we wanted to get our brothers who are Christians, our brothers who are Muslims. So we try to break the history down so we could get them out of, no, don't worry about His Majesty as religion.
Yes.
Let's look at what's the root of where he comes from because of what he's standing for. So you got the Pope here issuing international terror around the world. Hell, the Pope is issuing hell for the earth. And now the Pope's claim on November the 2nd is challenged by the King of Kings, a higher throne, the only person in the world. So I tell all my Moorish brothers, I say, yeah, brother, you can file all the UCC papers you want, but you can't counter the Pope's claim. The only person in the world that could have countered the Pope's claim was the King of Kings. So when the King of Kings came on the scene, November the 2nd, 1930, according to star knowledge, that's why we always talk about the star knowledge to let them know His Majesty's right in line with that. So in November the 2nd, 1930, now the Pope's claim of being under the primacy of Peter as the highest authority on earth falls. It has no validity. And that's why I would say you never seen a European go and contest the delegation of authority of His Majesty. They never went and contested his title. They never said this is impossible. They went and bowed down and followed royal protocol. They followed all the standings of international authority. That's what they did. So
tell them what year, though. Tell them what year. This is Jim Crow. This is Jim Crow.
1930. We're in America, and white people are in Africa bowing down to an African black man, to a King of Kings, and they are in awe. Now you have to think. The Pope's claim is now really null and void.
The beast shall make war with the lamb.
Right. But the threat to them is still subtle. So they go in respect to His Majesty. But His Majesty didn't sit in Ethiopia and say, well, I'm good. They're carving out all of Africa because the Berlin Conference was in full effect. They're carving Africa out. But they didn't sit in Africa and say, well, we're good. June 15th, 1935, His Majesty declared that he is the emperor of all of Africa and that he is the king of all Negroes around the world. So His Majesty at that point in time.
Are you talking about the Chicago Tribune?
The Chicago Tribune, the Defender.
Okay,
Chicago Defender.
Just for making notes that we know the levels of brethren is talking facts and things. Go ahead.
So he has countered the Pope at that time. Now, this is where we say, listen, black people of the world, we can all make a stand of liberation if we can just understand how all of this international law works. And we make it simple. The Pope places a claim over you that puts you in a perpetual slavery where these systems are over you. Now, the King of Kings comes back and counters the Pope's claim by saying you are his people. You belong to him. Now, the next step is for you to declare and accept the jurisdiction of the King of Kings. But when His Majesty did this on June 15th, 1935, October, Mussolini was invading Ethiopia.
The beast shall make war.
And they forget, everyone forgets that His Majesty had countered the Papa Bull's jurisdiction.
I'm about to do an episode. I have a document that talks about His Majesty outreach to the African American community in the 1930s, from late 20s into the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
His vision was to have African Americans rebuild Ethiopia, modernize the whole modernization, and he was counted by the State Department because he said it would cause less disruption to have African Americans come in because they look like Ethiopian. There wouldn't be that social cohesion would be there. I'm going to do a whole episode on it. A lot of people don't know he offered competitive salaries, payments, vacation,
car,
all these things to try to attract skilled African American labor. He very much admired, African American ingenuity, and was in touch with the UNIA. I have a elder who talks about the work. Rastafari was providing financial assistance to the UNIA.
Yes,
Ford family took up
Rabbi
his
Ford.
Rabbi Ford took up his invitation and moved his family there. So there's this, as you say, it makes sense why Pope Pius the 11th, who is also the Pope who creates the independent state of the Vatican.
Yes.
So this is also the Pope in 1929 who carves out the Vatican from the rest of Rome into an independent sovereign nation. And then his next move is to connect with Victor Emmanuel and prepare, because I tell people Mussolini was a puppet. You know what I mean? He was just a guy with a big ego that they was boots up by Victor Emmanuel and the Pope Pius XI to go and execute the work. But this guy was a puppet.
Hit for hire.
Yes, and the Pope, because remember, all of the Catholic nations, I tell people, the Pope have the most advanced secret service that puts the CIA to shame, because remember, every confessional booth is part of their information gathering network around the world. It's the most advanced and sophisticated information.
The Jesuits
are like James Bond.
Yes.
We talk about the Jesuits. And His Majesty, because the Jesuits are known for their discipline and a lot of the education system. His Majesty drew for some Jesuits from Canada. But what people have to understand is these moves were made because of the blocking of the initial moves, because a lot of people are perplexed why so many Europeans were involved with the development of Ethiopia in the early days, and they don't understand that His Majesty is not building in a vacuum. You know what I mean? You make a move, there's a counter move. In a game of chess, it's not just you move the piece and then nothing happens. You just move the pieces where you want on the board. He's moving his piece and he has to make the best choice. And sometimes there is not a good choice, but you have to make a movement to get to further down in the vibration. You know what I mean? So His Majesty knows full well that there's undermining going on, that the CIA, all of these actors are active in the country, MI6. You know what I mean?
His Majesty was a master chess player, and the world missed it. The Declaration of June 15th, that's a proclamation. It was published. So, a lot of brothers now say they doing stuff and they put it in a newspaper, and they say if I put it in a newspaper and nobody don't contest it, it should have a standing in law. Well, it's the proclamation of the King of Kings, the Emperor, was made that declared us his people. Nobody contested it. No American government. Nobody put no chastisement on those words. Said that's impossible. He can't claim this, that. No one did that because they couldn't. You know why they couldn't? Because that would be them declaring that they are still holding us in slavery.
Yes.
And when
He shall set the captives free, wipe away transgression,
and rule. Yes, and so when we talk about the prophecies, it says he shall gather us from the north, the east, the west, and the south, and he shall make those who were not a people, make them whole again. So how could he do that? You know, so when we look at this, you know, I have to tell the brothers, I have to say, listen, Ras, listen, kings, listen, queens, listen. The King of Kings countered the Pope, right? He counters the Pope's claim. Now, the next stage of countering the Pope's claim is you have to remember the Papal Bull doctrine. This was international law with no moral integrity. It was just about colonialism, domination, European domination, stealing the natural resources of the world. Now, the King of Kings comes on the scene. He defeats Mussolini. And now the ushering of moral integrity back into international law is led by the King of Kings. There is nobody else there. There is no other African nations. They're all under the Berlin Conference. The King of Kings is there. He just was with the League of Nations. He watched it fail. Now he's there with the United Nations, helped writing the preamble, getting these things in place. And now it is ushering in the moral integrity back into the law. But now what comes into the law is human rights, indigenous rights, the protections of human rights, cultural rights, social rights, all of these things came back in. But what most people don't get is His Majesty was a representative of customary authority. The Pope and them represented non-customary hereditary authority. Those were Caesars of power. Those were those who came in under the coins of the Alexander of Macedonia, the Alexander the Greek, the Platonius dynasty, the Platonius dynasty. You know, that's who, when we think about Herod and the Hellenized Rome and all of that, that's who that is. When you get to Jesus' story, it's the Platonius dynasty, the same people who were going down the Nile Valley trying to destroy all of the temples. These are the same people. So they were there to destroy the customary hereditary right. His Majesty represents the returning of the customary and the hereditary rights. So His Majesty, when he counters the Pope, he has to make the next moves. So after that, he gets in, you get the United Nations. So now you get human rights is put into the aspect. But now, if you are an attorney and you've been watching, and me and my brother, Rasife, who's pushing very hard now with the AU, the ECOSOC, and trying to get those things pushed. We had a big discussion, and I was explaining to him that a lot of the attorneys who are going to court under the reparations or going to court about slavery, they're making the biggest mistake by arguing slavery as a thing of the past. They're arguing colonialism as a thing of the past. If you go look at RCRC, well, the International Committee on Red Cross, IHL, that's the international laws that you need to look into. All of those rules, read them. Now you go look in there, you're going to realize that a crime, I mean, not a crime, but that something that was not a crime in the past, you cannot retroactive back and make it a crime and punish them for it. So unless it was a crime, then you're not going to be able to hold somebody accountable for it. The international courts then did that. That's how they keep everybody from being able to argue slavery. But you're not supposed to argue slavery like that. So in the EWF, we understand that His Imperial Majesty, after making the edict, after declaring that we are his people, he made the next move. He ordained us a constitution. He gave us a flag. He gave us land, right? These are three components of statehood. His Majesty is fulfilling our position of statehood. Now, he's ordained our constitution, which now that's an imperial edict. This is an emperor. This is not just no president. It's not no senator. This is an emperor. This is just like if you say the Pope created the jurisdiction in which America and everybody says gave them power. The King of Kings has created a jurisdiction that gave us power. So now His Majesty has ordained us a constitution and so forth. But he doesn't stop there. His Majesty then goes and signs a treaty with the United States. He signs a treaty with the UK. He signs a treaty with Trinidad. He goes over and signs another MOU here with Germany. And in all of these contracts with them, he gets them in the treaties that he's getting them to commit with. The statement of the United Nations and human rights is in the contract. So now, if you go to try to sue somebody, right, and you'll sue another country and you get in the international court, the international court's going to ask you, what gives us jurisdiction to break these people's veil of sovereignty? What you saying gives us an authority to it? And the only way you have an authority is where, this is why, brothers, you learn in the UCC is good, because you learn that it's a contract. Remember, this is commerce. So if there's a contract, then someone can adjust to see who breached the contract. That's where the jurisdiction comes at. So there's a conflict of interest in this contract. So the jurisdiction, no, because they gave you a contract. So now the court can go in there because it's a contract. So if you go back to slavery in the past, we don't got no contract. And so they use that to try to break the veil. The courts throw these brothers out the court. They throw the sisters out the court. But if you know and understand what we're saying, that the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the conquering Lion of tribe of Judah, declared you his people. So when we become members of the Ethiopian World Federation, we're stepping out of the jurisdiction of the Papa Bull. We're crossing over. So when you hear brothers say they file in the UCC, well, brother, if you filed your UCC paperwork in their courtroom, you're still in their docks. You're still in their dockets. You're still in their port. You're still in their currency. You're still in their maritime. So you got to somehow bring your vessel, your ship, your vehicle, as you know from UCC, your body is called the vessel, the ship, because you're in maritime. So you got to bring your ship to another docket. So what we do in the Ethiopian World Federation is we first come into the Ethiopian World Federation. Now, if you got 25 people, you can receive a charter. Start your own tribal government. Start your own government. His Majesty has given us this power because our charter comes from the imperial throne. So we're chartered to have this jurisdiction. So now you come under the Ethiopian World Federation, you receive your EWF ID. All right. Now that's your first stage. Now His Majesty, as just like the Pope, he's the head of the church. So that means king and priest. So that's that Melchizedek. So it's a doorway, the two pillars. So you coming back into the doorway, into the sacred fold. So next thing you go is to the Ethiopian Tawido Church, and you go get your baptismal. You get your baptismal name, you receive your baptismal certificate. Brother, you coming all the way out their jurisdiction now, because your birthright, your name is now written in the book of life. You've come out of their book of hell, right? Now you take these two documents and you're able to go to Ethiopia and receive your national ID. So now you have 3 forms of ID that declares you an Ethiopian by nationality. Our tribe is Kush, but our nationality is Ethiopian. But we are Kushite people. And why do I say that is because a lot of the things that are happening in the movement now, we have a divide. You got some brothers saying, I'm from America. I ain't got nothing to do with Africa. I ain't never been to Africa. Well, brother, I got something to tell you. I'm going to tell you something very simple. According to scientists, the African is the only people who do not come from the Neanderthal. If you're not African, you a caveman. If you're not African, you come from the caveman. You understand? Now you say, well, brother, that's harsh. Let me get even a little harsher. The Ethiopian history is the only thing to properly direct that. In the Ethiopians' kings list, they tell you that you had the king Aram, who was called Ori, King Aram, and then you had King Cam. So you had the Cam dynasty and the Aram dynasty. The Ram dynasty, that's why we started off with Canaan, with Melchizedek. You hear people talking about Palestine and Israel, and they're arguing about that. But the original name of that land was Canaan Aram. So the land was named after the first king of Ethiopia, Aram. So it's called Canaan and Ram. So now we could think that's the Ethiopians, them Canaan, and then Melchizedek was there with the Canaanites, but then this came right back to Ethiopia. So if Canaan and Ram, but Aram and Cam have a falling out. And history tells you that there was a kingdom divided. The Cushite kingdom was divided. And they say some was in Asia, some was in thing, but they would divide there to falling out. But in the Ethiopians kings list, they tell you that Aram, some of the Aram had messed with the Nephilims, the fallen ones.
Yes.
And Ham kicked the Arams out of the land, not all of them, but the ones that was messing with, kicked them out of the lands and oust them out. So now you've got a group that are dealing with the Nephilims than the fallen ones. So let's just call them the cavemen. So you got a group that done gone there, they done mess with some cavemen. So now for them to have birthright and claim to the heritage of the throne, the other family said, nah, you done broke the line. You can't come down here and claim no lineage or no throne, right? So now in the family, you have a divide. In our family, in our black family. That's why the whole biblical story throws you off, because the Assyrians are Shemites, the Moabites are Shemites, all of these are Shem. So that means all the people was black.
Yeah.
That was fighting each other.
Yeah.
But they wasn't really fighting each other. They was really fighting the Israelites. And when you go to the Ethiopian book of the Maccabees, the Ethiopian Maccabees, they tell you that the Ethiopian Maccabees, in the story, they tell you that the Ethiopian Maccabees were fighting the children of Israel. Well, if the Maccabees are Israel, how they fighting Israel? But when we go to the Ethiopian story, there's a component in the Kibra Nagas that tells us about the high priest Zadok.
Yes.
But most people miss the construct in the story is that David was trying to get with a Cushite woman.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that plain way. All of the men through the Bible, from Moses and every one of them, married a Cushite woman. Every last one of them.
Yes.
So David had to marry one for the right to the throne in Jerusalem. Just to
but
say
even in Kemet, the pharaohs would try to find a wife from
Cush.
From Cush.
Yes.
To have that legitimacy. Sarneta, whatever you want to call the land of the gods. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So this is something. This is what I wanted to share, is that the Nile Valley civilization, the culture is the same, because a lot of people say that Yeshua is a copy of the Hebrew, but what they not, when I look at Yeshua is a man that's bringing the mystery school teachings to the people, that the things that were hidden, that Christ consciousness that was within, because remember, we were made in the image and the likeness, but this was hidden from most of the people to control them, because the same Nephilim that you talk about, the fallen ones, let's call them that, certain elite, they wanted to hide this knowledge so that they could be manipulated. When you read some of the things in the Bible that the people were doing, they were following these fallen ones, and the Bible is sometimes they just give you one sentence that might have been 1,000 years. There's a lot of things left out. You know what I mean? It will just say that the children of men and the fallen ones, they went into women and the Nephilim were born. That's one paragraph, but that's a whole. When you read the book of Enoch and they break it down and they start going more in depth into some of these things and the covenant that they made upon Mount Hermon, and the weapons of war and all of these things. When you look at some of these things, it's very fantastical. But then when you look at the story of the Babylonians, the Sumerians, you're starting to see these similarities in the narrative across all the world religions, and all of the traditions, different iterations. But why I say that, when you look at the Lord's Prayer, as in heaven, as in earth, as in heaven, so as above, so below, You know what I mean? So the Hebrews are really saying that they manifested something that was written in the stars from the earliest recorded history, you know, the virgin birth, the coming out of the womb, you know what I mean, and all of these things. They're saying that they manifested this in a man who come to break the chain spiritually, and the reign of the Nephilim that were requiring bloody sacrifices, you know,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
fruits. He broke that reign of that oppression upon mankind, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
then now His Majesty comes within the same light, you know, because I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up with His Imperial Majesty, so I learned about Yeshua through the teaching of Kadamawi Haile Selassie the First. And now I'm realizing now the appreciable love for Yeshua through His Majesty. And you know what? One of the things I used to struggle with was why His Majesty was so loving to European people after they had done so much wickedness. And what you realize is that He look at the whole earth as His children, you know, and that healing that was necessary, you know, peace on earth is much. But saying that in the Constitution, the royal line is still preserved to the bloodline. You know, if you come out of the bloodline, you still forfeit access to what you're talking about, which is the divine authority. You know, that's put in the Constitution. The Solomonic link between Sheba and King Solomon is also in the Constitution. So
Yes.
this is what I tell people, and as you say, no nation on earth contested this, including modern state of Israel, which you know was fully up and running by 1955 revision of the Constitution. So even if you argue, you know, it wasn't in existence when the 1931 Constitution was promulgated, they were fully up and running, and they made no contest against the claim
No contest.
of the bloodline, you know what I mean, of the Davidic throne. And again, this is written. So, you know, for the ones who burn the Bible, this is where, you know, I diverge, because
Yes.
the fact that Ethiopia stands with blood, you know, the throne was defended with blood. It almost fell in the 16th century to Ahmad Gran, the left-handed, who came the closest. And during that time, the amount of works that were burned, you know, of historical works. And this is one of the reasons why the church in Ethiopia allows the proliferation of the white image of Jesus Christos, because most of the ancient manuscripts are hidden and they're not shared because of the trauma from Ahmed Grant, you know, where they almost lost the whole story. They had churches that were outlaid in gold. You know, when you read
That's a touchy subject there, you know, because you know Santos Bonocci and many of what's the elder Williams, you know, they touch on the topic of the Catholic Church having to do with some components of the Islamic uprising. And in that topic, they're not wrong, because we were hitting that when we're speaking about the Basilius and the titleage, right? What happens is in the customary law, those blood lineages were in the inland. And if I can't reach you, right, I can create a religious paradigm to where I can make you and your brother become a chastising to each other. So in the essence of the teachings, Melchizedek's teachings, and this, I'm just saying like that, there was always the oneness of God, okay? And there was always the oneness of God. In the Islamical aspects, the oneness of God was put at a height in that those were, but it's still the same biblical stories. But what happens is when you get into the Islamic traditions, even the Prophet Muhammad said the holy Ahlul keep the holy Ahlul. And then a lot of Muslims say, I don't know, holy Ahlul, that was the Prophet's Muhammad's family.
Yes.
He said to keep the holy Ahlul is like to keep the Quran. All right, but in the tradition, they want to, and my cousin, we just had this conversation. Is they know that the prophet has the Ethiopian lineage tied to him from Amina and so forth, and that this story has so much else woven in it. But if you focus on that, the minds of the people will focus on the value in the identification of the race or the people rather than the oneness of God. And that becomes a corruption. So in a righteous people, you could convince a righteous people that those who, as the Quran says, the Solomon receives Sheba's throne, but the people had left the oneness of God to worship the sun. And if you look at this a parallel of the story, meaning that if you look at our people today, we want our people to see the oneness of God in them. But right now, no one sees that. They're waiting on the sun. They're worshiping the sun, but they don't. The sun represents light, but they have forgot to be the generators of light. That they're the ones who bring forth the light. So they're worshiping the light rather than becoming the generators of the light. And in that aspects, this is where Solomon and Sheba's story was actually at. Sheba represents the feminine aspect. When you get into the feminine aspect, Sheba is a 7. So we know we talk about our 7 bodies, our spirit, our soul, our mind, our emotional body, our astral body, our life force, our physical body. Then we talk about our 7 chakras. Then we talk about we're bodies of light, and light has 7 spectrums. So Sheba, in some aspects, is metaphysically representing your physical nature coming to the Solomon, to the solar man, to the Christ man. So this Sheba has to come to this Solomon, but the Solomon then has to make the throne right, correct the throne. So what's the throne? And so it's a lot of metaphysical science in there that a lot of times, like you say, if you throw out the whole story, you throw out the Bible, you burn all of that, you miss the codes that are there that have been given to us. And I said where you was talking about with the Islamic, it's touchy there. Because of that aspect of somebody being able to manipulate another group to become war driven on each other, so that where they couldn't reach their hand to touch the customary so forth, another one would do it under the name of the oneness of God. Okay, so now those blood lineages, and I'm gonna say it like that because when you go to Canaan, the Canaanites use the word Elohim. The Canaanites use the word El. The Canaanites use the word Zadok. That was part of their dietary system, not Hebrew. So there isn't even no Hebrew. It's them first. But the Elohims, and that's where when we get to the Ethiopian,
they were the first superpower.
Right.
The Kushites were the first superpower. Kush and Canaan, which are the same family, were the superpower of that time before even Kemet goes to prominence. They were, because their civilization stretched into Turkey, into India,
everywhere.
And
so that's the ancient ones. That's
Saudi Arabia,
right? And they call them those the ancient ones. And when we get to the ancient ones, to get it simple, you get to the Ethiopian king list, you get people like the name Ethiop or Ethiops, and then you go into the Greek or the Hellenistic traditions, and you see that they call the god Ethiop. You see that Aries goes to the Mahel or Breh of Axum, that they already had a god of war before the Hellenized constructs and so forth. But then you look at these names that they put as the gods in the Hellenized Greeks constructs and the Roman constructs, and you're tracing them into the king's list and so forth. You're realizing that our ancestors and their antiquity, these ancient ones, were the ones that they called the gods of the earth. They honored them. So then when you get to that construct and you're looking at them, they are the Elohims, they are the Anaki, they are those ones. So now you're getting back to that Ethiopian story and all of those riddles that everybody keep, like you said earlier, they've run it and it goes to a next level. Now, if you want to go on to a real high level conversation with that, we just talk about the aspects that, our ancestors speak that it was a meteorite shower that hit the earth. And after that meteorite shower hit the earth, we go through that Pangea. We go through those dust clouds from the destruction of the meteorite that caused the freezing. And after the dust clouds cleared, the sun comes back in. The land that froze after being broke then starts a continental drift. But we were the people here on the land. We went into what they call the snake tunnels, the underground tunnels of the earth, the Shambhalas, the cities of the underground cities of the earth. After the dust cloud clears and everything starts to come and the ice starts to melt, we come out of the underground cities and start repopulating the world. We had temples.
And for those who are not familiar, if you go in places like Turkey, they have huge underground cities that are deep, down in the stone, that have, halls, banquet, this, what, I mean, these are things that don't get publicized, but they exist out there. Yeah, they exist. And these are Globekle Tepe was part of this network of cities, and these have been carbon dated to over 12,000 years, which predates the previous estimations in terms of when civilization, the domestication of animals and crops, they had it in Iraq and Iran, but this civilization in Turkey predates these. And remember that archaeology is touched by colonialism, so a lot of the history has not even been uncovered yet. So
they don't want to reveal it.
No, they don't want to reveal it. And then this is the other thing that we have to know. There is a huge black market in antiquities and books. So when you go to an archaeological dig and they find, for example, a black face associated with some of the ancient civilization, that don't reach National Geographic. That a lot of that stuff goes into private collections. It's sold on the black market. Some billionaire, multi-millionaire, global elite have that in their private collection, and you never see that. There's a whole industry in terms of if you read about Kemet, and there used to be a whole thing about tomb raiding. When you talk about Tomb Raider, it's a video game, but these were things that were happening in the 1700s, 1500s. Tombs were being raided, history taken, noses, destroyed, lips destroyed. All kind of things were done to obscure, the great history that we're talking about, and to bring it forward to the EWF. His Majesty, working with Dr. Malaku Bayan, Howard University alumni. I always have to big up my schoolmate. You know what I mean? Knowing what was happening, and I have an interview coming up. I interviewed one of my family members, Jerry Small. And many will know him. That interview is coming up. I'm going to put it up for the Patreon shortly. And he shared with I how Marcus Garvey, the whole schism happened with His Majesty, and how they were withholding Marcus Garvey's communication to His Majesty. The British Royal Mail Service was not delivering the mail. They separated them. They wouldn't allow Marcus to meet with His Majesty upon his arrival in the UK. They picked and choose. There was a whole operation, and Marcus got frustrated in typical Jamaican fashion. He lick out, you know what I mean, and said some things that were unfortunate. But it was because he wasn't being able to communicate with His Majesty. However, we know the intent of the king because of the EWF. This refutes you know, all of the accusations that Marcus had in terms of why is Majesty not reaching out to the black people of the world to assist in terms of him being a puppet for Europeans. All of this is refuted by the
Yeah.
existence and work of the EWF, which
Yes.
established to execute the work that could not be done because the communication was cut between the UNIA and, you know, His Majesty at the time. You know, there were Pan-Africanists like Ras and great ones who did get to meet with His Majesty. But that meeting with Marcus didn't happen, and it created a great schism. But again, the EWF is a living testament. We went really deep tonight, and I give thanks. This is just part one. We did 2 hours just like that, my brother.
Man.
This is just part one, you know what I mean? But you see how deep, and I love the direction you took the reasoning, because you're going to the heart of where does the authority derive from for the law and all of these things. And I think we don't have these conversations enough, and people don't realize the importance of the symbolism of the charge that His Majesty made on the earth, the diplomatic work, groundwork that was laid. His Majesty was the one who advocated for China's admission into the United Nations. You know what I mean? Not just Africa. His Majesty was a champion for all of the small, at that time, unrepresented nations. You know, one of the famous meetings of history was when Mao Zedong was thought to be dead, and he reemerged, and the first person he had audience with was His Imperial Majesty.
Yes.
You know, these were, you know, huge aspects of the history, and now we see where China is the rising superpower, the dragon reemerge, you know, as the superpower and financing the infrastructure on the African continent. So a lot of these things were laid from His Majesty work, you know what I mean, the groundwork that was laid. So I really give thanks for the eye. We didn't even touch the topic. That's how serious the reason was, but we're going to do a little overtime. I'm going to ask the eye for a little overtime because we didn't talk about the state of the Pan-African world. I want to get the eye.
I could say in a quick summit. So I'm going to try to say in a quick summit is that we need everyone to be aware that it is a time of changing and that there are a lot of powerful things going on. I always remember when I used to listen to the brothers in the Nation of Islam say that, you know, being a member of the Nation of Islam, it will help you reach people and prominent people and upclass people. Well, let me explain to you also that being a member of the Ethiopian World Federation and working under the works of His Majesty, as the Idrin has just said, His Majesty had built relationships around the world. Well, right now, we're dealing with all of the kingdoms of Africa. I'm just saying all of them because I'm not going to leave none of them out, even if we haven't reached to one. But we're in pretty much almost all of the countries working and connecting. We're working with the royal families. Just as we consider ourselves the diasporas, we have to also know that all of the royal kingdoms in Africa were displaced as well. When they implemented the Berlin Conference, they carved out Africa. So they took lands from the kingdoms. And a lot of these kingdoms have not been replaced. They went in there and they killed the kings of these kingdoms, chopped off their heads, trying to destroy the spirits of these villages. Their bodies and remains have not been returned to this day. So when we speak of the diaspora, we're speaking of ourselves here in the West and also in Africa, because this is the state of the Black world today. We are one. So as His Majesty has set in the Ethiopian World Federation's constitution and set for us is unity. And so if you listen to what our preamble says, it says we, the Black peoples of the world. That is multiple types of black peoples, meaning it's black peoples in Japan, it's black peoples in Mexico, it's black peoples everywhere. And guess what? His Majesty gathered us from the north, the east, the west, and the south. So the Ethiopian World Federation is your place. It is your government in the diaspora. And right now, today, you will see that all over the continent, all over in the diaspora, everyone is awakening to self-determination. We are realizing that we have still been prisoners of war. We have been still being governed by our colonizers and enslavers, and they have no plans to make sure that we exist in the future. So in the preamble and in the Constitution of the Ethiopian World Federation, it tells us to protect ourselves from annihilation. So we have started a sustainability development. The Ethiopian World Federation and Beginning in Unity, for those who are students of law, go read the Montevideo Convention. As said earlier, we have a government, we have a constitution, we have a flag, and we also have entered into a treaty with the Lakota Oyate Nation. The Lakota Nation, they are the family of Chief Crazy Horse, the great Chief Crazy Horse. So it was prophesied by Chief Crazy Horse that there would be a unification between the black, the red, the yellow, because the earth would be sick. And it would come a time where they would have to build again to erect the tree of life. So ironically, not ironically, but spiritually, we are walking in prophecy in this time. We are walking in prophecy at this time because the Ethiopian World Federation came together. We like to thank Ross Fabian Knight. He was one of the brothers implementing and building a relationship with the Lakota tribe. He's from Jamaica as well. We implemented a treaty, the Treaty of the Circle of Life with the Lakota tribe. And it didn't realize to us at that moment, but we started sitting one day and we were thinking, I said, wow, Chief Crazy Horse said the seventh generation. The Chief Chasing Horse, who we signed the treaty with, is the seventh generation. And that's when we realized we were walking in prophecy. So what is the state of the black peoples right now? Is we're walking in the prophecy of our liberation. His Majesty gave us a government, the Ethiopian World Federation, which gives us the power to ask our colonizers today, what is your delegation of authority over us? Are you still holding authority over us based on colonialism, slavery, and the Papa Bull? For there is no evidence of a mutual agreement for us to waver and give it as a collective of people. So you've assumed a position based on the first assumption of delegation of authority. So as you see us in the West, in the diaspora come to this, we witnessed to this in Malawi. We witnessed to this right now with our brother Ibrahim and them, that they realize that we have to be in the motion of self-determination. We have to challenge this system. We have to stand up and fight. And we have to become not just in this, but we also have solutions. Biggest thing we talk about is money and empowerment. Well, Local 49 Ethiopian World Federation, we're pushing what's called the tax residency certificate. Number one thing with all of the movements is the financing. But the thing about that is, how can we move as a government for our people when our people are paying taxes to another government? So we're financing our oppressor. So every country, Russia and all of them, when they come to the United States and so forth, they file what's called a tax residency certificate. So they're not double taxed. And their taxes, they say, I'm paying taxes in my domicile, so I can't pay taxes here or I'll be double taxed. Well, yes, that's our pathway to reparations. We don't have to ask nobody to give us nothing. We give it to ourselves. So we filing a tax residency certificate. We've got the unification of many of the kingdoms in support and the African countries, because this will allow us to develop a treasury, a sovereign wealth fund, a treasury, so that we can then fund our own development. Now, this funds, if you're paying your taxes to our treasury, right, that's an investment. That's what America has done to us for years. The UK, they've taken our money as a taxes. Those are investments in a corporation, and we haven't received no return. Our taxes are not represented in what our interests are. You take our taxes, you send it to Ukraine to fight a war. You take our taxes, you buy missiles to help blow up the Palestinians. That's not where we want our money at. We're not here to be supporting oppression in the world today. All of this colonialism, it is a new day. Palestine was colonized land. America is colonized land. Canada is colonized lands. So it is a new day, and in Africa, they are breaking the chains of the colonizers, and it is spreading everywhere, and it will spread to the West. Again, to my brothers who say that they are Americans and they'll have nothing to do, remember on the Ethiopians' king's list is Yucatan. And people say, why you say Yucatan? Because Joktan is Yucatan. And Joktan is the progenitor of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. And guess what? The Atlantic Ocean was called the Ethiopian Ocean. And the isles in the Ethiopian Ocean were called the Isles of the Kings, the Ethiopian kings. Our kings were considered the kings of the West and the East. Yes, where the sun rises and the sun sets. That's king of the whole world. That's how they directed it. So those who say that they are American, we're letting you know today, you're Ethiopian, you're Cushites. And to prove that to you, go read the Targum, Targum, and you will see that before Europeans ever came to America, they had already identified the Ethiopian as an Indian. So when they used the term in the West, they had already been using it here in the East. It wasn't a new term. So this is a new day for the breaking of the veils of all colonial lands to self-determination. We're united the indigenous tribes under the Treaty of the Circle Life. And under this tax residency certificate, we'll be able to create a powerful treasury to fund all of our developments and sustainability. The taxes that are placed in the treasury will be.
So this is being done with a partner nation, where the EWF is going to be work with partner nations to give their members residency in that nation, and therefore pay into. Explain that part in terms of what is the relationship going to be with the partner nation, or is it the kingdoms that you're partnering with? Is it the African nation states or the kingdoms? Okay, Wi-Fi the guy. The reason is getting hot, family. I tell the item, high level Rastafari reasoning. That is what we deal with here. The brethren was cut off. We'll wait till he comes forward. I'll read some messages. Give thanks, Minister Ras Lazarus, Nazari, for the much needed word sound. Palm J every day. Big up yourself. Lion Pride on Patreon. Check in. If you're not subscribed to Palm J every day YouTube channel, go and support the Brethren's channel, Collective Security for Surety. Sharing this on all my social media platforms. More ones need to check this word sound out. So you see the Brethren is sharing this platform. I'm sharing the Brethren's platform. That's what we call collective security. Ethiopia, the land where the gods love to be. That is what we're talking about. Fireheart. And I mean the history. Yes, sovereignty. Yes. True sovereignty. You know, not just a catchphrase. Greetings to Chazmach and Minister Rastafari Lazarus. For I honor and bless the I them, Holy Emmanuel, I King Selassie, I Jah, Rastafari. Bless up yourself, IRS. Facts. Yes, my goodness. Yes, Queen Ifea. And Queen Ifea reached out to I and said, boy, you need to reason with Ras Lazarus. My brethren, Bingy Sean, had reached out to I before. And I see why the brethren answer my heights reasoning. Big up Lion Voice, big up Ras, the Chasmach Kwasi Fire Hot, Sealer. Yeah, man, that's how we deal with it. If this is your first time here on the Lion Voice, we're dealing with high level Rastafari Pan African reasoning. News, yes, Ras. Big up yourself. Positive TV, Power TV. Yes, I big up yourself. People, make sure you share this or not. Yes, Spam J, make them know. Family, one order. Jeremiah 23, 5 to 8. EWF patrimony set up in the North Country, ushering in the restoration and repatriation unto the blessed land. Yes, I. This is the hour. I was going to ask the brethren about how he feels about the Sahel with Ibrahim Traore, how he feels about what's happening in Congo. Ras Laz knows once you know a thing, you can't unknow it. This knowledge runs deep. I agree, my sister Kiss. I agree. Shashamani, happy to say this is my dad. Okay. Daughter in the audience, bless up yourself, Shashamani. Yes, your dad. Well read, well studied, well studied. Negusa, Selam, big up Lion Voice, big up the Chasmach Kwesi. Red, hot, we the black peoples of the world. And if you haven't seen, we have an interview with Julius Garvey on the platform. Go check that out as well. Word, Sound, and Power. We're about to drop a brand new Lion Talk with Ras Ajay, who played Claudia Massop in the Bob Marley movie, and he's an artist. So that's coming up. So stay tuned. We got some big interviews in the chamber for drop on the family. So just know that. Big Mill, get ready for the eye reasoning too, Big Mill. Big up yourself, Majestically Fire Ones, Big Mill, one of our promoters. I want to have a reasoning about reggae music promotion with Big Mill this month, in a reggae month, because I want people to understand the realities of our music and where we are. Big up yourself, Big Mill. EWF or the new REWF. We heard that the EWF is defunct. EWF cannot be defunct. If we get the brethren forward, then we'll talk. But EWF cannot be defunct. It's a perpetual charter, the Constitution. So all it needs is ones that live up to the requirements and it's up and running. So cannot be defunct, and there are EWF all over the world. I love this Black Messiahs class all over again. All right. Yes, Kiss. I love it too. I love it too. Give thanks for the reasoning. Give thanks for the item. And I think we hit a record. We went to 62. You know what I mean? That were online concurrently. I think that's a record for the platform. We'll confirm. We just passed 26,000 subscribers. And the item, as long as you love it, we're going to continue bringing the content. On to the United Nations in January 2024, culminating in the restoration. On to the United Nations in January. Blessing. 2024, culminating in the restoration. Greeting. Something is open there.
Yes, I just closed it.
All right, beautiful. So we were talking about the state of the black peoples of the world, the topic of this evening. You were gracious enough to give us a little bit of overtime on the reasoning. You know what I mean? We are going to okay, hold on a second, let me just finish with these comments. Johnny Johnson, I want to interview Johnny Johnson. Johnny Johnson have too much knowledge in the comments. I don't like that, Johnny Johnson. Send me an email, make and I reason. This brethren have so much information, just history after history. Big up all the past history and brethren who are ancestors who represented EWF, like Ras Gladstone, Robertson, Ras Bro, Wolf. This is why every time Johnny Johnson come on the platform, he dropping gems. We gotta talk. Yes, it's fire real. Big man, stay tuned for your link. I'm glad Trump cleaning house, USAID, UN, African Union, ECOWAS, all highly fraudulent fight against Rastologists. And I'm debating whether even to talk about the whole thing with USAID because of the YouTube and the algorithm. I think I might do a reasoning for Patreon because a lot of people are complaining. I don't think they really realize what's happening. This is a revolution. We were talking offline. This is an internal war that's happening in America between various factions. We don't have any illusion who they serve or that they love us, but what we're witnessing is unprecedented. I mean, this brethren Trump is warring against the deep state in plain sight, and it's a serious war that's taking place right now. But it's gonna give I and I some breathing room on the continent. You know what I mean? And if you know, so this is, and everything is just working. The Most High is just working. You know what I mean? So at the same time, we have this uprising. You have the dismantling of the funding of a lot of the saboteurs right now are unemployed. You know what I mean? Like in real time, we're seeing it. You know what I mean? It's something to behold. Go ahead.
The EWF is moving in a capacity now. I sent forth some information on our foreign affairs and our ambassador program. A lot of people may not understand is that the Ethiopian World Federation is a global entity, but it is a federation. So if you go Google or Wikipedia Federation, you're going to see that the United States is a federation. And just like the United States, you have a central government and then you have state governments. So I'm a member of Local 49 that is in Atlanta, the southeastern area. So that's our jurisdiction. Then in New York, we've got other locals and that's their jurisdiction. Each local is an autonomous, but each local has the constitution, the bylaws, they hold elections. So we have election every year. Our new elected president, Ross Kimian, Queen Afia is our vice president. So we are governments. And what happens is in the USAID, these are entities of colonizers that come in as though they're healing, but they're not really healing us. Come in like missionaries, but more bodies being buried. And so the EWF and our constitution says we have to save our people from annihilation. And I like to say is that the Ethiopian calendar is 7 years behind the US calendar. And go back 5 years, 10 years before 2019, you look at the minds of the people, we were scattered brained in a sense. And we weren't collectively on where we at now today. 2019, the people hit us with COVID. We go through kind of chaos and all Black organizations membership went up. You know, before that, Black organizations had dropped in membership, all of them, the nation, everybody. And people had forgot what these entities were for. Because everybody thought, well, man, we got money now. We can go to work. I could go sit in the restaurant. What? I could be a star. I could make $1 million, man. What are the Black organizations for? So that's how people had treated them. until they felt the threat of the government trying to force them to do something which they thought they had the right over, their body. And then the mindset started realizing we need some black organization. Some organization to help me. Well, I ain't got to do this at my job. Now everybody wanted black organization. So
Yes.
now the value of what we were supposed to be doing started coming back. So now the workers and everybody was on like, oh yeah, it's on now, boy. We got something to do. The battle back. We started waking up, but we was asleep then. But the real, and I'll say in our paradigm, and I'm talking about this window of 2019, in our paradigm of the shift, the major shift for us was Dr. Sebi.
Okay.
We have been defeated. The definition of our paradigm was being controlled by our enslavers. And then all of a sudden, here was this brother who said he beat AIDS. Huh? Boy, that's impossible. And that's the white people think. Ain't nobody supposed to be. How he did that? That black man did that? That man. Black man did that? A black man was able to use his intelligence and end their terror. See, it was a point that terror got a defeat. And the psychology of that we could overcome started being thing. So a paradigm was shifting now because we had never had that visualization of that. So now people started becoming more awake to this reality, but it doesn't kick in until the people put the press on us. So under Joseph theory, when they press you, when under the Joseph Bible theory, that what people choose to do wrong to you ends up being good for you. So when they came pressing the people with all of that, they forced the people's back against the wall, as Marcus Garvey said. And when their back was against the wall, everybody had to realize it. So now everyone starts realizing what organization is supposed to mean. So when we get to the USAD and we're looking at these organizations going in Africa, that's supposed to be us.
Yes. Bring
That's
it around.
supposed to be us, not no one else. That's supposed to be us. Just like you said earlier, His Majesty seen it fit that we went back to Africa and built. We don't need we need our people to come back to Africa and build. So in that aspect,
that's the healing, because what we realize when you travel to Africa, that healing process cannot happen without the physical people from the diaspora connecting with their ancestors who were remained there. That interplay, not just repatriation is just one aspect. We have resettlement, and then you have reintegration. These are also parts of the healing, and that healing cannot happen theoretically. It literally has to happen, in terms of those relationships being forged. So what you're saying, my brother, it is so crucial. We've started to do that with Habesha. All of our programming has been geared toward that. We saw that early, and the Quaco Ando Sustainability Institute that we have is geared specifically around healing, because when slavery was over, there wasn't a whole triage of mental health institutions and programs to help you to heal from the trauma that you had endured for 400 years. That wasn't there. So we carry generational curses, you know what I mean? And sometimes it manifests as alcoholism, molestation, infidelity. People are carrying these demons, intergenerational demons that were inflicted upon them in many times, and we have to start to deal with them. And this is part of why Black organizations don't work, because there's trauma. You have the fight or flight response. Either we fighting in the organization, or people just disappear. They take away themselves. You don't see them after a while. They just, I can't be bothered. You know what I mean?
One hard day, I'm already struggling. I got all this to deal in my regular life. I ain't got time to deal with this.
Exactly.
The mental the mental capabilities of operating and working together without going through another stress or triggering component. It has to be. We just started our mental health process. In fact, we got it tomorrow. We'll be going more into Dr. Joy DeGury's post-traumatic slave syndrome. And that's one of the things in our legal committee that we're also addressing is that, the court system have failed to recognize in a certain aspect, like, can you analyze what it does to a people who have never been set at liberty? What does it do? Because see, as men, we're supposed to be. We have an inner feeling that we're supposed to do for our family. We're supposed to have a certain amount of authority and decision-making power and all of this. But we're in a society that takes all of that away from us. So generation after generation, can anybody really determine a people who have been stricken and taken away from having liberty over their life? What does it do? So what frustration does it build up? What other elements does it build up? So when we're talking with the youth in them, we don't never tell the youth they're wrong. When we do youth outreach, we don't tell them they're wrong. We try to explain to them many aspects of, as you say, the mental health, the traumas, what's making them do what they're doing. Some forms are instinctively rebellious. Some of them know that they're supposed to rebel, but they don't know how to rebel. And then in those aspects of that as well, the EWF has to be in a certain position because we've got brothers and sisters. It's like we had the sister 2 years ago, the sister child, she gave birth to a child. She didn't want to take the vaccines in the hospital and had to battle with the hospital about for her baby. And our culture, our ways, says, she couldn't, their system is saying, you ain't got no right. You ain't got no, you gonna follow our ways. And so this is where we have to come in our organizational structure and build the collective, educate them so everyone knows the language. So we move in solidarity. We find enough brothers and sisters to train them so that they're operating in an official capacity. Because, when you're in your official capacity, that's when it's diplomatic capacity, and so that's when you operate into that immunity. So when we look at all of this and we start to address it, when we look at what's going on with the Trump movements and so forth, we're looking at the Civil War all over again. We're looking at the good old boys who were happy with breaking away from the imperialistical orders for a moment and being able to barter and trade and thought they had their own paradise and that was good. And then you had the northern boys who wanted to be in the international banking arena. And so when the southern and the northern went to fighting, these southern and northern boys were fighting over how they were going to operate. And one knew if we don't have a currency, then we can't do business internationally. The other one felt like they don't need no currency because they got bought and trade, they got slaves. So the North didn't come to free the slaves. They came to deal with commerce and economic empowerment. So when they defeated them, the Southern boys felt like they had just sold their country back to the international bankers. So in the core of all of this, with their orders and secret orders, they were still at odds with each other. So when we look at the January 6th, we seen the good old boys come in because they were showing these bankers this. You gave our country to these international bankers, we're going to take it back from them and we're going to take it back from you. And so then when we started remembering that international bankers dealt with economic hitmen. So when we looked at most of those uproars throughout Africa, those were the international bankers. And those were, who was their accountings? The Jews are the accounting. So they're the funnelers, they're the movers of the cash, and you have to pay them for being the bookkeepers and so forth and things like that. So when we look at what's going on in those other aspects and Trump making those moves, as you said, they're fighting amongst themselves. They're fighting on who can best manage us in this commerce reality. But at the same time, it's because they're seeing that their grip is slipping. And then they see they can't. And other ones say, well, if you let me run it, I could get it back because you done sold us one time to the international bankers. So when
And
we watch,
this is to bring it all around. This is the aftermath of the king taking the throne and liberating the global south, because the king liberated the global south from the grip of this colonial overriding papal order that had been imposed on the whole earth. And now that global south is becoming mature, you know what I mean? And we talk about the Sahel states. I love this comment from Judami William. He said, it's not lost on us that the Sahel states have 3 Ras heads with the red heights, gold and green, also Ghana red, gold and green under the star, also as the door. That's where you and I make stand. So again, it's very crucial when you look at the flags of these 3 countries. This the red, gold, and green, and we know that was in tribute to His Majesty's role and Ethiopia's role. You know that these African countries have the red, gold, and green. So everything is just tying in prophetically. If you have eyes and you can see, everything is so clear right now in terms of the divine power. This episode likely will be demonetized because we talk some things, but it's important for the family to hear these things because we got to be focused right now. You know what I mean? And this is why I'm trying to help my family get their economic houses in order. Particularly, you know, my passion is the creative industry. I hear from the eye that you're creative. Before we seal up, I want you to, well, 2 things. I want to know, other than the tax scheme, what other economic programs does the EWF have? Because very critical for our institutions to have their economic strategy, their business plans, or whoever they're going to, because we have to transition from volunteer institutions to paid staff. We have not gotten there in the Black struggle. Most of our institutions are volunteer, and while that is admirable, you can only get so much work done.
right.
A volunteer, and the sustain. You know, you go through hills and valleys with the volunteer, because when the passionate people get too old or whatever, you gotta wait until that spirit rises up, as opposed to an institution. It's like clockwork. It's just running. Got people getting paid. I can support my family. I can, still do the work. So what are the economic plans for EWF, if you know, or if you're comfortable to share? And then I want to find out about your filmmaking, how people can support the eye. You come on this platform, I tell my audience, we have to spend money with the brother. You love him, I see all of the comments. Put some money in the brethren pocket. We got to view it cooperative economics. I want to get to the point where my guests can come on and 1,000 people who watch the video spend $10 with that guest. You get an economic boost. That's my vision. You know what I mean?
Yes,
We want to build that culture here on the Lion Voice Network. So talk to us about EWF and economics, and then talk to us about your own film production and creative endeavors, and how the people can support the eye, follow the eye, and spend money with the eye.
I would like to say a big shout out to Ras Sharif Muhammad in the Gonja region of Ghana. Prince Muhammad, as we know him, who was able to secure 100,000 acres of land for the Ethiopian World Federation. Now, we haven't started development on that, but
I
that
heard
is
about that land. I heard about it. It's up
that's
north.
yes, up north, and that's gifted. But we started our first project with another northern kingdom, the Kingdom of Bua, His Royal Majesty Kuro, which is in the northern kingdom. We were awarded 4,000 acres there, but we weren't prepared, so we started with 1,500 acres. In the 1,500 acres, as most as everywhere, we're going to do the sustainability farming, the developments. Right now, we're in discussion trying to build to the next level. We didn't want to go into Africa and don't bring sustainability and infrastructure developments. So we're seeking to go in there with solar power companies, refinery developments, and some other things as well. Data centers, info centers for the fintech that is coming in as well, with training centers. And then, we go to the vertical farmings, cannabis agreements as well, the hemp, the cannabis. And we started importing shea butter at this time. So we can do major wholesale imports of shea butter. So we can provide shea butter to anybody that's looking to build their shea butter. Local 49 EWF at Gmail. You can email us, or you can find us Local 49 on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. And just contact. And we have the shea butter process as well going. But there's a lot more than just that. Some things I don't know if I'm able to say here. EWF. In our constitution, we say EWF business is EWF business. So a lot of you would have to join, and then you can come into the Zooms and you can learn some more details of some of the things going on. But we're talking with multiple of the kingdoms. One of our things is me coming out of prison. I was fighting the cannabis rights for Rastafari, and I was awarded Rastafari exemption. The Native Americans have exemption for peyote. They It's written in the book. So first the DA tried to give it to me, where I could have signed, and did a power of attorney and helped others work under it. But the thing wasn't for me. It was to stop the persecution of Rastafari as a whole. It doesn't make no sense for me to sit in Georgia and I have exemption, and then one of my brothers in South Carolina is being pulled over and beaten. I have a brethren out of Atlanta. I always remember him and his wife were traveling to a Nyabingi, got pulled over with an ounce of marijuana. The brethren went to prison. They sent this brethren to prison for 12 years. He came back. It wore him out. He died when he came home. Wow. So it literally was a death sentence, and we have to stop that. Brethren are being beaten down in county jails and forced to cut their hair when they go to the state prison. This is a sacramental right. So we don't want a license. And I've been in debate with many of the Rastafari brethren saying, no, we shouldn't be asking for a license. We don't ask these people for a license because you say this came to you from the Creator. So it's an inalienable right. If you ask for a license, you make it an inalienable right that they can, a privilege that they're giving you and they can take from you. So it's not that we want them to give us something. We're telling them you're violating something.
Yes.
So under the exemption, that's what we were pushing, is that to stop the violation of the human rights. So we do have that, and in our partnerships with others and certain companies, we have ability to import, export, bulk from state to state and out of the country. So any of the brethren that are working in Jamaica, so forth, let's link. There's ways that we can make this work on major levels.
film company?
My personal, I'm an
Yes.
author, I'm a filmmaker. I have over 10 books published. I have groups of books from Temple Building 1 to Temple Building 10, which is spiritual studies, it's universal studies based some of the things we've spoke about here. Then I have my book series, The Black Rose of Kush. It's written as a fictional, but it's cultural heritage developed into an urban story so that it could teach the consciousness that's not being handed down. As a Gullah Geechee, I was given oral traditions. There are no more children sitting outside by the fire, no more listening to old men talk. So they're at the video game or they're watching the TV. So I have to create it in technology. So we're putting it in a game process. We're putting it in the film processes. Not only am I the author of The Black Rose of Kush, but also Varsity Club, a coming of age book for college or high school students who are under the peer pressures of trying to fit in the urban realm. And then I have my Righteous Warrior series going to the book Terrorists, speaking about the average thug that ends up being a hero. So I have been putting up a lot of information to try to help us shift the consciousness. We know our teaching, our oral traditions of teaching the children through stories and so forth was the way that we embedded our culture into our children. And I learned that that is a key. Watching Colors, Godfather, Scarface be embedded into us and making us identify with someone else's culture. So, in that same aspect, I believe I wrote the greatest book, the greatest story that's been going to be in the next 20 years. People going to realize what it was, the Black Rose of Kush. Yes, it is implemented from the spirit of Rastafari. And a lot of the things I written, this book was written 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I can tell you 80% of the book has come true. And it was a fiction story in per se in a certain aspect.
Wow, wow. Where can people buy it? Because we want to put money in your pocket.
I'm on Amazon. I'm on lulu.com, LLLU.com. Amazon, you can put in Ras Lazarus, Nazari. You can put Lazarus, Nazari, and it should come up. The Black Rose of Kush on Instagram and the Black Rose of Kush films. So look for the Black Rose of Kush film coming soon as well. Give thanks.
Powerful, powerful. And I have to invite the eye to become a member of the Association of Rastafari Creatives. We also have a film group in there as well, and we're putting together a trade union for Rastafari Creatives so that that communication with ones who are doing creative works can be there. In the same way you see I Rising Up Rastafari Independent Non-Aligned Media is the same way that all of our different subcategories of creativity have to come together. All of our authors, our publishers, because we got to create our own overarching Rastafari economic ecosystem. The spiritual ecosystem is coming together, but we need the economic ecosystem to come together so that circulating that Rastafari and Pan-African dollar. Go ahead.
I'll give you privilege to this as well. I am also an investor and partnership in a gold mine in Ghana.
Okay.
Gold and lithium mine, which we are using to monetize to fund the creative developments of film and even the farming aspects and so forth. So yes, we definitely need to build as a collective. Because that can benefit and help all of us in developing of production availabilities and so forth. So, yes,
it's
economics is the key.
Perfect. So you see, family, we did 48 minutes overtime. I want to thank everyone. You stayed online with us, over 50 live. We think we hit 62 at the max, which I think is a new record for the platform. I think 59 was our previous max. So we're building, we're growing, and it's because of the item taking your Wednesday night to see live high level Rastafari reasoning, Pan African reasoning. Hundreds will watch this after thousands, maybe. And this is just part one. We're going to bring forward the brethren because we just did some little touches, on these topics. We could have gone deeper into the historical part, but I think this was a beautiful framework. What didn't go how I anticipated, but it went just how it was supposed to go. You know what I mean? In terms of going into the anciency and bringing it right forward to the EWF and the divine authority bestowed within the EWF by Kadamawi Haile Selassie. So I give thanks, for that deep dive, high level, you know what I mean? Give us any final words before we seal up. Again, I just want to encourage everyone. We're doing our 100 Lion Pride Strong. We're looking for 100 people to join us in the Patreon at the $10 and above level. We're doing consultations. I'm helping people to build out their own creative ecosystems using YouTube, building out your ecosystem, because just like I asked the brethren how people can find them and he can block the sound, everybody should have an ecosystem, you know what I mean, where people can support you, where you are putting your creative energy, because if you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for someone else. You just maybe don't even know it, but you're part of somebody else's economic ecosystem. You cannot go around it, so you might as well have your own, you know what I mean. And I'm here to help more so on the creative side, but we can reason, regardless what your product or service is, you should have a creative ecosystem. And there's no reason that any business should be local anymore with the World Wide Web. Every business, it automatically becomes an international global brand, and you need to know how to navigate this new space, because we're still at the beginning of it. A lot of us feel like we're too late. I don't want to start, because no, we're at the beginnings, kings. And I mean, Africa and Asia are just starting to come online. The penetration is just starting. So our generation, we're still the pioneers of this whole global connectivity. So the time to start whatever your passion is today. Start today, whatever it is. Film yourself, do something, put it up there, talk about something you're passionate about, do something, don't just be a consumer in this time, be a part of the solution. So give us a final word sound to the global Lion Pride. What, as the Black peoples of the world, should we be meditating right now? What should we be doing right now? Give us a final sound.
Okay. I'll give you a final sound on it, but I have to say, in the economics, I wanted to say Undewall. UNDEWALL. Underwall.com. A lot of us are on Facebook and these platforms where we're not allowed to really speak the way we want to speak. Underwall was developed by our brother Damien. He builds his own servers. Yeah, this brother is a genius. So the EWF has been moving so that its data information can be protected, and it can be on its own server so that we don't lose our data and others can't.
Important, very crucial.
So underwall.com and unchat.com. Those are platforms that the Local 49, the EWF, are using. We are building our website with Brother Damien, so If you're interested in having a site or a page or anything, go on Underwall, contact Brother Damien. This is the key to us in protecting our information. In closing, my words would always be, I am that I am. I am love. I am life. I am light. I am liberation. I am that I am. The 4 L's, the square in which we stand on. Love, life, light, liberation. Let everything that you do be in love. Let it bring you to the truth in life. Let it bring you to the light so that you may come out of your darkness, so that you may find your liberation. Everything must bring you to liberation. Give thanks.
So there you have it, family. Ras, Minister, Lazarus, Nazari, powerful word sound. His daughter was here in the audience. Shashaman, you saw her comment. Yes. So we give thanks. It's a family affair. This is part 1. Stay tuned. Keep it locked. High level Rastafari Pan-African reasonings are right here. Why? Because the time has come for the lions to tell our own story. And this is the lion's voice.
Yeah, now the time has come for the lion to tell his own story. Yeah, the one them called Celestial I represent for the mighty lion voice. And this a shook up your planet tectonic. As me sip up my roots and tectonic. And you can't make me jump nor get panic. Have the engine a run like mechanic. Room.
The time has come for the lioness to tell her own story.
Yo, this is Parabens and time have come for the lion to tell them own story. This is the lion's voice. Stay tuned.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari, live it. Hey, the lion's voice. Rastafari.
Greetings, this is Warrior King, and the time has come for the lions and the lioness to tell their own story. This is the lion's voice. Give thanks and praise for the wonderful blessing that's been poured on me. Give thanks and praise. Jah use yet an instrument to set the people free. Jah give her the powers to chant. Jah give her the powers to chant. Rastafari, the lion's voice.
Amina, the time has come for the lioness to tell our own story. No surrender, no retreat, we are Jaja soldier. Rougher than the streets, tougher than a boulder. Bigging up Lamb's voice. Now put it, I Jalifa said that.
This is Sangy Davis. It's time for the lion to Ika. For unity is strength. Let us come together, my brethren and sisters, and forward to the motherland. Enough love. This is the lion's voice. Jah Rastafari.
I'm Nana Farika. The time has come for the lioness to tell her story from her viewpoint and tell the world who Queen Omega is. This is the lion's voice.
Yeah, David Dread of Steel Person. I'm saying hail to the lion voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Oh, yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.